Hi, this is Dan Schneider for Still New York, and I'm here today with advisor Hannah Reimann, who is a multi-genre musician, actor, and entrepreneur. Hannah, welcome. Thank you so much for your time.
I'm delighted to be here with you, Dan. Thank you for inviting me.
So I just found out about Hannah's background. I knew she was a great musician and an actor and entrepreneur, but I asked, where were you born and, how'd you get to New York? So um, based on the three-tier system that E.B. White has pronounced about how there's three types of New Yorkers. There are the ones that were born there and bred there, the ones that commute there, and then there's the settlers who come from all over the world and become part of the fabric and make the energy that makes New York so unique. So, Hannah, which of those categories do you fit into?
Well, when you mentioned that earlier, it really struck me that I almost fit into all three. My parents were those who came from afar. They came from Germany and Korea. They were settlers. And I was born in the French hospital downtown in New York City. So I was born in New York, but when I was a baby, they moved out of their studio apartment with their two kids and moved to New Jersey, to Springfield. No, actually, they moved to three different places in New Jersey before they settled in Springfield, where I did most of my growing up. And then I left for boarding school when I was 15, and I came back to New York City while I was in college, which was the beginning of my long residence in New York City as a New Yorker. And after college, I mean, I've just been here since then. So I know what it's like to be all three.
No. Well, that's great because you have all different perspectives and yeah. So tell us about where did you go to college? What did you study? And tell us about your early education and influences.
My early education. Well, my earliest education was in Montessori school, which is where I sang for the first time when I was like 2 years old. And I think my family knew I was a performer then. But I became a pianist very young, like 5 years old. And my dad was my favorite teacher because he taught me my first Beethoven and Bach. And then I was blessed to have some really great classical musicians teach me, composers and pianists. And one of my teachers, who was Juilliard trained with Erwin Freundlich, told me when I was about 13, she said, "Hannah, you can be a pianist." And I didn't really know that, even though I was playing Beethoven sonatas and Mozart concerti and all that. And it made me very confident that this wonderful classical musician told me I could do what she was doing. So that started me on a trajectory where I wanted more and more to just be playing the piano all the time. And I studied with the Juilliard staff while I was a teenager, but I wanted to go to a liberal arts school. And I left high school early, and I started college when I was 17. I went to the New School for a year, and then I went to Sarah Lawrence, mostly because they had lots of big Steinway pianos that I wanted to play. And I got my BA there. But I studied with a lot of musicians outside of Sarah Lawrence. I studied with Ken Cooper, who was at Manhattan School of Music. I studied with Germán Diaz, who was an assistant to Claudio Arrau and George Bollett, who were these big 20th century pianists. I've studied with so many different pianists, so I can tell you more about as we talk more about my life as a musician. But that was where I went to college and got my BA.
And this is where we insert all the still photographs of Hannah growing up and playing piano and singing and all that. So note to self.
Oh, and I went to the Putney School. If anybody out there who went to Putney is listening to this, we all know that Putney was a very special place and had a profound influence on me musically as well.
Is that the boarding school that you mentioned when you were 15? Yeah. Yes. Oh, okay. And where is that located? Or where was it located?
On a little hill in Putney, Vermont, where 200 kids spend, the year together and learn all about life.
Interesting. It sounds like a great background and training. So you're now out of college. You're in New York. what were your first experiences being sort of the second generation settler in New York? Tell us about your feelings and your if you
Well,
can remember.
I was so excited. All I wanted to do was to move to New York City. I was so excited to finally be here. And I lived in Brooklyn with my sister for 3 years in Carroll Gardens and Cobble Hill, and I practiced all the time. And I took restaurant jobs. I kind of moved up from the Heights Casino to the River Cafe, and I could work making tips until midnight or 2 a.m, and I could practice all day. And I could also afford to go to the balcony level concerts at Carnegie Hall and the Knitting Factory. I could go to hear all the great pianists and hear all the great jazz musicians, because even though I was a classical pianist, I wanted to hear people improvise, because I knew that classical musicians were improvisers when they were alive. And I wanted to hear people making stuff up on the spot.
Any particular pianists, jazz pianists that you were influenced by back then, or
I
was it?
loved listening to Paul Bley. And I like Keith Jarrett. I was moved by those guys. Oh my God. Some of the ones I really loved, I just heard on records like Thelonious Monk. But well,
And then when did you start acting? Did you act in college, or when you start studying acting when you were in New York?
I started acting because I wanted to play in movies. After I became a concert pianist and I'd been, playing concerts and teaching a lot, I wanted to put myself through acting school. And it actually was really delayed. I had a whole life with classical music, and I was married. I was married to a famous classical musician, and I traveled all over the world. And eventually I wanted to be on my own and got divorced. And I, instead of becoming a university wife in California, I decided to stay in New York City and put myself through acting school at HB Studio. It was really because I wanted to play in movies. I didn't want to see people pretending that they were playing. I wanted to be the actor who was actually playing the piano. And what happened was I just completely fell in love with acting, and I just wound up doing both. And I was also in the midst of becoming a professional singer. So I was kind of like juggling these things, like playing piano at Cafe Vivaldi, taking class with Austin Pendleton at HB Studio. I got little gigs in lots of independent movies. So I started making independent films and started singing and, recording more of my own material. So it was a pretty rich life for a freshly divorced, starving actor living in the village. I was working my tush off, and I learned how to act. So
Wow, that's amazing. And what better place to study than New York, with all these music teachers and acting teachers, and get to practice in piano bars and in off-Broadway theaters and things like that. So no, I think the whole piano bar scene is something that is really unique to New York. And unfortunately, it's not as easy to find a good piano bar these days.
No, those jobs are really gone. And what I did at Cafe Vivaldi, I was just playing there every Sunday because the owner wanted to hear classical music every Sunday. And it was, it had its rewards. It led to me playing Claire de Lune in one independent film, which was really wonderful for me. But it was also a little painful to have gone through this divorce and having played in music festivals, in some other countries, and making big checks, to being broke and playing all this music for very little. And eventually, I had to kind of wake up and say, got to be practical here. What am I going to do? And
so now, what are your current projects? Let's jump ahead a little bit, because
okay.
we have unfortunately a limited amount of time, but
Sure.
I know you're juggling a lot of really interesting projects right now. Why don't you start with the upcoming International Stretto Piano Festival, which is, I believe, May 15th to 23rd of 2021. Tell us a
That's
little bit
right.
about that and the origins and what made you think about it.
Okay, I'll try to be concise. This project means so much to me because, tracing back to what we were just talking about, one of my piano teachers told me, as I was, kind of ready to go off on my own and not have teachers anymore. He said, you can play anything. You're playing great. You learn how to play Liszt. You can play all this Chopin. We're doing Beethoven sonatas, but your hands are really small. Why don't you try to find a Joseph Hoffman piano? And I was like, what is he talking about? Who is Joseph Hoffman? So I started first, after just asking him those questions and then doing some research, I found out that Joseph Hoffman was this diminutive man who in the 1920s, a friend of Sergei Rachmaninoff, the great Russian composer, who had several pianos custom built by Steinway and Sons to fit his small hands. So he had these custom built grand pianos made by Steinway that he could play whatever he wanted. He wouldn't have to struggle or stretch. And some of his big handed people would show up and they'd make mistakes because they, their hands were too big for it. And I was just amazed that this even existed. So I started pestering the Steinway company. Where are these pianos? I want to try one. And eventually, Henry Steinway told me, well, we burned all of those after he died because we didn't want to be making this size for this person and that size for that person. And it started me on a quest that literally has lasted 30 years. And back then, it was about 1997, I decided to have my grand piano, my Steinway 7'4" grand piano, rebuilt to have smaller keys. So I could see what it felt like, because nobody would do it for me. And I had to buy the keyboard myself and find a technician who would work together with me. And I wound up on the front page of the Wall Street Journal because of it. And it was like this huge triumph, but I still could not persuade the piano companies to offer them to the public. And I've just, every few years, offered my patents that I spent thousands on. I offered a PowerPoint presentation. I auditioned for a Shark Tank like Women Inventors show. I tried every way I possibly could. And finally, the current president agreed to let me tell the public they will now make pianos with smaller keys on custom order. And to celebrate this, I decided to curate a festival. And then I thought it'll help me even more if I enlist some people who are in this network, who know more people than I know, who have smaller keys in their piano. So I met two women who are part of this network of people for alternately sized keys, PASC, and Rhonda Boyle and Carol Leone, who are very accomplished in their research and in developing instruments like this. So we are co-curating, co-artistic directing this unique piano festival, people all over the world who have pianos that have smaller than conventional keys. And it sounds a little nutty, but it's really wonderful. It is just the most exciting and freedom promoting project that I am part of. And it's a community. It's about equality. It's about children. It's not just about women. There are plenty of men who would like to play pianos that have smaller keys, and we're going to have so much fun.
It sounds wonderful, and what a creative idea. And what's the website? Can you find this festival online? Is there a URL?
We have a Facebook page, and then we're on the Musee website. Musee is an online platform, musee.me. I'll send you the link. I think it's musee.me/info/Stretto Piano Festival, but I'll make sure of it. And we have a growing roster of pianists from Australia, Texas, Germany, Norway, Wisconsin.
And it's all virtual, right? It's on Zoom, I believe, or on Musee. It's on Musee, which is an online live stream platform. Is it strictly live stream, or will it be also
No,
on demand? Okay.
no, most of the concerts, probably all of the concerts, are going to be pre-recorded concerts because we want to have the quality of sound that you can get from pre-recording. And but the first pianist to record on my piano is coming down from Boston this Saturday, and she'll be playing in the gallery where my piano is found. It's in a public location, and she's going to be recording, and we will have some in-person audience. I mean, we're inviting a few people because we have the right protocols there and enough space. So her name is Arazi. She's Israeli, living in Boston, wonderful diminutive woman who will be playing mostly the compositions of living women composers and a few world premieres. So I'm extremely excited to be welcoming her. And
you guys have a secret handshake? You know, the people from the past.
We should invent one.
And the other question is Donald Trump playing in this festival? I want to know, because if he's playing, I'm buying a lot of tickets. You know,
I'm so sorry, man. I regret to say I didn't invite Mr. Trump, but
no, because
now that you've reminded me, maybe we should put a word in for him.
Invite him. I hear he has very small fingers. You know, that's what word has it. No, I have small fingers too. So, but they're very wide. So does that mean anything about me if I have small but wide fingers?
It means you've got a lot in common with Elton John, and as far as what people have told me about him.
And he plays pretty well too. Yeah.
He's an amazing pianist. Yeah.
Wow. So, well, this sounds like such a great idea and a great festival, and a great network that you've created, this international network of people who are enthusiastic.
Well, I haven't created it. Donna, Rhonda, and Carol are the ones who are responsible for the Pasque community. I'm the link to Steinway. So they have been working independently, gathering their forces, and I have been prodding the biggest piano company in the world. So together we have different things to offer. And I also just, I had my piano rebuilt so long ago. People reach out to me. They want me to, participate in their projects. This is the way that I feel like I can really make an impact, is by saying, now Steinway will make these for you. If you'd like to buy one, come to me. I'm their liaison. I'm the first person to do this. And I'm still pinching myself because it's, it sounds like a small step, but it's a very big step for this project.
Now, are they still a New York-based company? I believe they were originally a New York-based company, Steinway.
Yes.
And where is their showroom now? I heard that it moved recently. I think it moved to 43rd and 6th or something like that.
That's right, in the old ICP building. It's much more modern. They have a lovely concert hall in the basement, and it's exactly where you just said.
But it started, I believe, in Queens, or correct me if I'm wrong. Where
no, the factory is in Astoria, but the Steinway Hall Rotunda used to be on 57th Street, just down the block from Carnegie Hall. And that's a really historic place. I still miss it. I gave many recitals, and my students played there for years, and I still miss it. You could see people playing from the street. It was just wonderful.
Wow. No, that's so beautiful. And it's such a New York story. I mean, only in New York could you walk by and see a studio of people playing pianos, and except maybe in Vegas, but then they only have 2 pianos and it's dueling pianos. In New York, it's just, you have people just doing their thing. And tell us about your studio. Where are you right now? Where are you sitting?
Right now, I am sitting in my commercial space at 101 Charles Street, near Hudson Street. This is where I do some of my teaching. My piano with smaller keys is at Revelation Gallery, part of St. John's in the Village on 224 Waverly Place. So I also spend time in that space teaching, and I do all my rehearsing there now because I'm playing, repertoire on the little key piano. But right now I'm on Charles Street, and this is where most of my teaching is done.
Okay, tell us about your teaching. Do you have private students? What are their age ranges? And are you mostly doing it virtually now? Tell us about
Yeah, I feel very, very fortunate that when the pandemic hit, most of my students stayed on board and wanted to take virtual lessons. I'm I've been teaching also for 30 years, at least as long as I've had this piano project, and I worked for the Diller Quayle School of Music for 10 years early in my teaching career, but I always had my own private studio. So I had one on the Upper East Side. And then when I moved to the Village, when I moved, back here after I was in California for a short time, I started my studio in the West Village and in Greenwich Village. And most of my students are ages 4 through 18, and they take 30 lessons a year. I've kind of like a format the way that music schools do, which was, like I said, very fortunate during the pandemic. A lot of families really wanted to hang on to those one-on-one activities. And some of the kids really started practicing even more because we had so much alone time. It was very hard on me at first because I wasn't used to being online like this, 4 or 5 hours a day. And I was getting blue light glasses and, not sleeping well and stressing out a bit. But as time went by, I have to say I'm so proud of my students at how they stuck it out and how we had Zoom concert after Zoom concert. Now, a year and a half later, we're having our first in-person concerts on May 8th. They're very small. They follow all of the protocols. It's going to be a lot of work for me and my team. I have an assistant and some, other teachers that I hire to work with the kids that I can't teach. And it's been, it'll be a lot of work for us, but we're happy to do it. And I think it's going to be super fun.
Oh, no, that's great. And yeah, things are getting back to more normal now that people are getting vaccinated and following the protocols. And but it's just amazing, how much you've done teaching and with the piano as the instrument of choice. And tell us a little bit about one of my favorite projects, which is your Joni Mitchell project. Tell us about how you got involved in that and where it is right now.
Help me, I think I'm falling in love with you. Are you gonna let me go there by myself? Not such a lonely thing to do. Both of us flirting around, flirting and flirting, hurting too. We love our loving.
Thank you, Dan. That means so much to me. I'm so happy that you've heard our show. I started a project that I now call Both Sides Now. Wow, it was almost 9 years ago. It was in 2012 when my father was very, very sick with dementia. I was so overrun with exhaustion and sadness. I didn't even have time to practice or to write. I'm a songwriter and I'm a composer. I have a record that I'm working on now. But I turned to the music of Joni Mitchell in my sadness, and I really wanted to sing this record Blue, just to make myself feel better. And I did that with my colleague Michelle Temple and a bunch of other people, Tad DeBrock, and who was our drummer? Felipe Torres was our first drummer, I think. We started at the bitter end. And I mean, honestly, the music was so hard, so difficult to reproduce in the original keys and arrangements. It was so much work to play Joni Mitchell's music, closer to playing the difficulty of classical music than pop music, that we thought after we did it, we were like, we can't stop doing this. That was so much work. Why don't we do some songs from another record? And 8 years later, we have like over 30 songs, and we're doing the first 5 or 6 records, 6 records. And it is just such a gratifying project. It's such a wonderful experience to sing Joni Mitchell's music and to communicate my own feelings through her feelings.
Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone? They pave paradise, put up a parking lot. Coming on Christmas, they're cutting down trees, they're putting up reindeer and singing songs of joy and peace. I wish I had a river I could skate away on.
So it's been a very rich project. We've included readings from a book called Reckless Daughter by David Yaffe. It's a portrait of Joni Mitchell. So I sometimes tell stories about her. And we intend to be doing a show in June, around June 25th, to celebrate the re-release of the record, the 50th anniversary of Blue, and the 3 records that came before that are being re-released by something called Joni Mitchell Archives. So there's, she's getting more spotlight. Her music is becoming more and more heard and known by people now. For a while, a lot of young people that came to our shows didn't know the songs, and we would introduce her to the songs, which was kind of blew my mind that they didn't know some of these songs. But now it seems like the momentum around her music is picking up more and more.
Well, yeah, she's obviously, to those from my generation, a living legend, and influenced so many people who are baby boomers and beyond. And I've actually been to your show several times, and I just loved it, and it gets better all the time. And what I loved is your knowledge and passion about her and her music, and the history and the anecdotes. You know, you really make it personal, so that it's an intimate show, because it's like you are channeling Joni Mitchell, and you're also the narrator at the same time.
She said, the trick is, if you listen to my music and you see me, you're not getting anything out of it. If you listen to that music and you see yourself, and it will probably make you cry, and you'll learn something about yourself, and now you're getting something out of it. And those are the people to whom my communication is complete.
I just love that show, and I just wish you luck with it. I hope it makes it onto the big screen, or maybe the small screen, or wherever. And it's just great work that you've developed.
Thank you so much. We would love to have a small theater where we could do this show every week, 1 time, 5 times, 7 times. And I have a crowdfunding campaign on something called ifundwomen.com / both sides now. It's going to be going on until the end of June, and the aim is to create a theatrical production and to bring a concert production to Los Angeles, where Joni lives, so that her people and her town can hear the show. It's where my producer, Peter Rafelson, lives, and who I collaborate with, who I know. I'm very grateful to you, Dan, that I know Peter, who's one of Joni's friends, and Peter and I are working on my record together. So we're working on my original music, and we have this Joni project. So I feel pretty blessed,
Oh, well, you attract great people because you are so talented and so positive. And it's, I'm so glad that you guys are working together. And yeah, her music is so special. And she's, almost like Bob Dylan, a poet, and just, transcends so many generations. And I believe will for many years to come. And it's a great show. So I don't know where you get the time, because you have so many of these projects going on, and it is just, and you are such a New Yorker at heart, because you are exhibiting all the things that bring people to New York, the ability to team up with other creatives, to cross genres, to cross businesses, to be an entrepreneur, and to mix the arts and the commerce in a really nice way that is probably most easily done in New York, because you could just virtually walk anywhere, especially in Manhattan or even in Brooklyn now. And so let's just hope that the arts and culture can come back in New York. Let's talk about that for a second. What do you see as the obstacles and the challenges, and how do you see the future of arts and culture in New York? Richard Florida, by the way, who's a professor of urban planning at University of Toronto, just came out with a piece this week in which he predicts that the major cities, including New York, are going to get younger. In other words, the young people will move back because they're always attracted to the cities, especially the artists and entrepreneurs. And that, maybe some of the people who left during the pandemic may come back occasionally, but, may not want to put up with the daily hustle and bustle and traffic and all that. So what's your opinion, and how do you see it? What's your perception?
Oh, Dan, I mean, this pandemic and this whole situation we're all facing as artists, it has caused me to pray for a renaissance. It sounds like it might be a little naive, but I'm hoping that some miracle is going to bring real estate prices down enough that we can have more of the mom and pop stores in the village, more artists playing where they want to play, how they want to play, venues that will cater to people who are, not like the top 3%, but that are incubating their work, that are making art now and speaking for today. And I just have this hope in my heart that the village can go that way. Because it really, before the pandemic, it just seemed like it was about to explode in these rock high prices, not rock bottom, like terrible prices, and artists not being able to live here. Now there are dozens and dozens of empty apartments. And I've been telling my friends, like, if you want to move to the village, this is the time to do it. Because if you can get a stabilized place, or even if you can get a place, it's, some of these places have come down a third in price. Mm-hmm. So that's my prayer. I don't know if that's realistic, but I don't know how else we're going to be able to deal with it without dealing with real estate, because that's really what dictates everything, right?
Especially if you have a piano. You need a place to store it.
Oh my God. Well, and that's, I'm praying for, the opportunity to move all my instruments into one big loft space in the village and not have these three places where I'm living and running around in circles every week. I have an expiration date on that, something has to give.
I hope so too. And I am also cautiously optimistic, because New York always comes back historically, and large cities come back after pandemics because they have that energy that draws these settlers, these artists, these entrepreneurs from all around the world. So let's hope that our prayers come true.
Yeah, I don't want to be naive. I want to be realistic, but that's what I always come back to in my mind when I think about that problem. How is the problem going to be solved? Well, it has to start with people being able to live here, And then of course they have to have jobs. And how are all these jobs going to come back? Me wanting to have a stage production of a Joni Mitchell show, there's all these other Broadway musicians who've been out of work. They've been waiting and waiting for their shows to come back. What gives me the right to expect that I'm going to be put in theater overnight? It could take a couple of years, but first things first.
You have a small cast, so that's in your favor. So you have a small cast.
I'd like to have like the full shebang. I'd like to be able to do the whole 9-piece band. But I mean, Court and Spark and Miles of Vials, there's a lot of musicians playing on those records. You haven't seen those shows yet. I've had as many as 9 people on the stage for some of the shows that I've produced. But I think that, for me, that seems to be the order. It's like a place to live, work to have, space to do the creativity. I'm sure New York can do it. I'm sure we can.
Well, with people like you, I have no doubt, because you have the energy, and and you make it happen. And the
You
vision.
too. You too,
Oh.
Mr. Schneider. You
So
are the ring.
tell me do you have a website that people can go to? Could we insert that on the bottom?
www.hannahreimann.com, and it has been revamped. It has just been renewed. So I would love for people to look at it and buy some music if you'd like to. Check out the Stretto Festival and all my other projects, the EP that's upcoming, the Joni project. If you're a student and you'd like to take singing or piano lessons, I have a whole staff. I'm planning my summer course now and planning shows. So yeah, I'm very, very excited about life in spite of how things have been, and I'd love to see you all again sometime in whatever capacity.
Well, thank you so much, Hannah, and thank you all for watching. And please check out Hannah's website and support her music and her works. And until next time, stay foxy and keep swinging.